right, good morning, Lagos. Good morning, everyone, wherever you are listening from. This is Follow the Money, brought to you by Naira Metrics. My name is Ugodre, and I do this every Monday, 8 to 8:30. I'm sure you're probably on your way to work or you're at home listening to radio or wherever it is you're listening from. Just rest assured, we've got another very busy Monday. A lot of stuff happened last week, so we will take you through some of the key things that we've got on our radar. What a busy week it was for Nigerian equities. Kind of like Nigerian stocks are the one to beat. I don't know what's going to beat them so far. Looks like there's hardly any investment at the moment that's doing better than stocks. If there's any, let me know. I haven't seen any yet. And last week, yet again, the all share index did gain. Gained was it 3% or thereabouts last week to close week on week at over 100,000 points, better than it did the week before. So looks like stocks are not going anywhere yet. Still going to be doing much better than anyone expects. And of course, we also have we're going to be talking about several other companies that were in the news last week. GTB was in the news last week. I'm going to talk about a bit about GTB. And then in the next few weeks as well, I am going to be going into Nigerian banks and this gist that we're hearing about capital raise. I'll talk a bit about Nigerian banks and how well they are positioned to raise capital in the next coming weeks. That's what we hear. But let's go on into discussion for today. For Nigerian all share index and market cap rose 3.71% last week to close at 105,085 points. That's the all share index. And of course, in terms of market cap, we're gradually closing to 60 trillion naira in terms of market cap for the Nigerian all share index. Of course, like I said, stocks are still the one to beat. Still got to beat Nigerian stocks. Stocks are up 40.5% year to date. It's just March. We're not even done with the first quarter. And we're seeing Nigerian stocks up 40.5%, and that's the all-share index. And then if you drill even into the NGX 30 index as the 30 most capitalized stocks, they're also up 40% as well, 40% year. And then the premium index, which is like, where you have the most, like 5 or 6 of the most capitalized stocks on the exchange, probably makes up over half of the exchange in terms of market capitalization. And they're also up 45%. So investors who have portfolios that mirrors the premium index this year, probably up 45% already if you have stocks there. And then the pension index as well. So your pensions are also doing quite well. Pension index up by 20%. So what's going on, guys? Pension index should be doing better than the all-share index. All-share index is up 40.5%, but pension index is up just 20%. Insurance index also at 12%. So stocks is still the best, still the investment to beat out there. I haven't seen any investment that you can beat. Even real estate doesn't look like it's doing as well as stocks at the moment. Treasury bills also right in there, but not as well as stocks. So what were the top gainers last week? Julius Berger, we saw a slight push up, last week, 30.5% for Julius Berger, closing the week as the best performing stock, opened at about 55 naira per share, and then closed at 72.6 naira per share. So what's going on at Julius Berger? I'm trying to figure out why the stock is doing so well already. Just 1 week, it's done 30%. It's not like they had any results released. Sometimes Nigerian NGX just defy all odds, but up 30.5%. Omatech Ventures also up 23% to be number 2 in terms of the best gainers for the week. And then MTN, despite the poor results, the CFO was out last week. We did interview him at Metrics last week, and he tried to explain what were the issues around their results. They came up third best performing stock last week with 20.96%. So if you are taking position in MTN after the results came out, that bad result, you probably be up right now because the stock did 21% in 1 week alone. That's 20.96%. NEM Insurance makes it at number 4 at 20.9%, just similar to MTN. They did release their earnings forecast, which I will speak to in a bit as we go on the show. Looks like investors liked what they saw, and of course, rewarded the shares with a 20.9% pop. Guaranty Trust Bank makes up the top 5 gainers for the week. They were in the news as well. Going to talk about that too at some point in the show. They did gain 17.8% to round out the top 5 best performing stocks for the week. Again, this is just 1 week, so if you invested in these stocks, if you bought Julius Berger at the beginning of the week, you're up 30.5%. I mean, like, nothing beats that at the moment. And of course, if it was MTN, you're up 20.9%. What's going to beat that in just 1 week of investing? Even if you discounted it for taxes and fees and all that, you're probably going to get at least 17% if it was MTN and you bought. GTB, of course, 17.8%, top 5. We do have Zenith right in there as well. Zenith at about 16.7% gains last week. And EcoBank Transnational also gained 16.5% last week. Running up the top 10 gainers was UPDC with 15.15%. Excuse me. Of course, you do have stocks that post losses as well, and then we had some stocks with losses, mostly insurance stocks. In fact, the top 4 stocks last week that posted losses were all insurance stocks. So if you have investments in this stock, should be a little worried. IEI Insurance, International Energy Insurance PLC, dropped 27% last week. Sooner Assurance dropped 19%. Lasaco dropped 14.5%, and of course, Consolidated Hallmark, they dropped 13% last week. So those were losers last week. An interesting stock I saw here as well, Transnational Corporation. It's been one of the best performing stocks this year, but it looks like it's losing ground quickly. It lost 8% last week, now trading at 15.5 naira per share. If you recall, at some point, this stock was hitting like 19 naira. So looks like it's fallen off a bit. Interesting to see if there's going to be a rebound anytime soon. But those were the top 10 gainers and losers this week, basically. So where did you fall into, gainers or the losers bucket? But all in all, Nigerian All Share Index up 40% year to date. All right, so we'll move on to some of the news we got last week. And Access Bank was in the news last week. I mean, they've been in the news for a bit now. Of course, you all know why. The sad passing away of their GMD and co-founder, Herbert Ugodre. But last week, they've been making some cool moves, and they announced Ike Imokwede, who is also, considered the co-founder of Access Bank. He's been Herbert's partner. They announced him as non-executive chairman of the bank. It wasn't a surprise to a lot of us, though, because we thought that this was likely going to be the next move, seeing that he was quite close to Herbert, and they basically just sort of shared the same vision. In fact, we do hear that they share the same family office, so they kind of like make investments together. So it only made sense that it was him that was going to come in there. But he's not in there as GMD. Herbert was GMD. Of course, GMD is the executive leader of the bank, but he's in there as non-executive chairman. But a lot of people know that he's going to be, driving things from the background, just as the bank continues to execute. It's a behemoth of a bank, the largest bank in Nigeria by total assets. So expect him to get in there and try to make sure that some of the legacies of Herbert Ugodre is kept intact. We also do hear that there's a lot of other reasons why he had to be there. He's quite influential as well, and there's so many transactions that need to be protected, at least the bank, and then the bank needs to be on solid footing. The last thing you want is investors getting fidgety or getting worried about what's going to happen to the bank now that your former MD is no more. So to instill confidence, you need to have someone that people sort of believe in, someone that people trust, no other than the co-founder of the bank. And so that's why you have Ike in there back as a director of the bank, even though he's in there as non-executive chairman, not an executive position. A lot of people did think that he was going to probably come back as group CEO. He was MD of the bank for 10 years until 2012 or thereabout, before he left. So he hasn't been MD of the bank for a long time. In fact, he hasn't even been in the bank for a long time. And so now he's back and expected to continue to push on with the legacies of Access Bank. So I'm interested to know what you think. Tweet at me at Ugodre on Twitter. Let me know what you think about Ike back as director of Access Bank. In terms of share price, didn't really see much movement in terms of share price appreciation during the week. Looks like investors already maybe priced this in, so they didn't think it was anything, of a big deal. Maybe that's what it looks like, at least share price wise. Of course, it didn't go down as well, so the share price kind of steadied all week, didn't make it to the top 10 gainers. And so, important announcement, and interested to see how that pans out. He hasn't made any formal announcements yet or comment yet, apart from the comments, the quotes that was ascribed to him in the press release that we saw. Right, before we go on break, I want to quickly just talk about other interesting news that popped up last week, in case you all missed it. GTCo. So all of a sudden we saw like 90-something million shares of GTB trade early last week, and everybody was like, what's going on? It's not all the time, it's not often you see that much GTB shares trade. And when you see stocks trade with those sort of volumes, you tend to think perhaps there's an acquisition happening somewhere, or there's someone buying into GTB, or there's someone selling. And the impression out there, if you speak to investors, is that GTB is one of those banks that you could consider a really beautiful bride. And that's because, unlike the rest of the Fugas, you have some sort of person or family in control of those banks, but GT is not like that. One of the co-founders, of course, is dead, but the other co-founder remains, but he's not been in the bank for a bit. And the current GMD of the whole Segun Agbaje, is also in a way considered one of the pioneers of the bank, but not listed as a majority shareholder of the bank. So again, compared to the rest of the Fugas, where you have some of their patriarchs as majority shareholders of the bank, be it Access, First Bank, Zenith, or even UBA. So that kind of sparked a lot of conversation, regarding who is buying into GTB. I mean, is someone trying to, play funny? And then GTB announced last week, of course, not officially, but we did hear, from sources, reliable sources, Metro's got the info from reliable sources, that they were looking to raise over 500 billion in equity, perhaps very public offer, a right issue, we're not sure yet, pretty soon. And so that was kind of calming a little bit, because then it looks like the bank itself knows they need to raise capital. So we also hear it's likely that when they raise this capital, they're probably going to keep, the shareholding structure the same. They don't want anyone taking over that bank. So you're likely going to still see, the same kind of arrangement where it is still controlled by, few people, but the guys who currently manage the bank will continue to operate the bank, still have executive power. So it looks like a lot of moves there. So that's one stock that's going to be on my radar. I'm going to be watching what's happening at GTB over the next few weeks and months to see how the position themselves. And so no surprises that the stock was among the top gainers. Like I mentioned earlier, gained 17.8%. Looks like investors know that. They kind of feel like something is happening and somewhere in there. So GTB share price currently at 48 naira per share, 48.4 naira per share. Price to earnings multiple is 3 times. I already explained price to earnings multiple on the show before. So the closer your price to earnings multiple is to 1, the cheaper a stock is. So at 3, kind of looks cheap, even though it's priced at 48 naira per share. So pretty interesting to look at. I've heard people say that, look, GTP is probably worth twice that amount. I don't know. So interesting to see how this whole fundraising thing and positioning the bank comes on. Remember, we mentioned that very likely there's going to be capital raise for banks announced anytime soon. And so if that happens, expect GTB to want to raise capital. And GTB has the least in terms of share capital compared to the Fuga. So quite incumbent on them to raise capital as quickly as possible. So interesting to see how that plays out. When we come back, we're going to talk about Unity Bank and NEM Insurance and Airtel as well. Be right back. All right, we're back. If you're just listening in, if you're just tuning in, this is Follow the Money, brought to you by Nairametrics. It is every Monday, 8 to 8:30. And in case you miss any part of the show, you just want to listen to it again, or even the previous one, you can check it out on any of your podcast platforms, preferably Spotify. You can have Spotify on any phone, actually, either iPhone or your Android phone. Just search for Follow the Money by Nairametrics, and you see previous episodes very well created for you to listen to. Of course, today's one as well will be out before noon on your podcast platforms. All right, so back to the show. We have Unity Bank. Unity Bank also made an announcement last week. They did release their earnings forecast. Earnings forecast essentially is just giving investors a teaser of what to see or what to expect in the second quarter of the year. And the bank is projecting a pre-tax loss of 20.7 billion in the second quarter of the year. Unity Bank facing a lot of challenges at the moment. Negative shareholders funds at 190 billion. So typically, when a bank has those sort of negative shareholders funds, it's a little tricky and stuff. But still operating, CBN backed. The fact that they're still operating is because the CBN still giving them some kind of support. So interesting to see big moves happening in that bank. It's still a listed company, by the way, so it's still on the exchange and shares is still trading. We do hear that they're looking for potential acquirers or potential banks that they can merge with as they try to sort out the internal issues that they have. At some point last year, there was talks around merger moves, but it kind of fell through. I'm not really sure what it's in the offing, but we do know that there are a lot of moves behind the scenes going on just to get this bank acquired or merged with someone else so that they can stay afloat. Share price dropped 10% last week to 1.80 kobo. So looks like investors are getting really tired of waiting, and share price did drop. But the bank released its earnings forecast and not looking good. 20 billion in projected second quarter losses. What that only does is it just sort of worsens your balance sheet. Balance sheet at the moment, like I said, is wiped out completely. Shareholders fund is negative 190 billion. So that bank needs at least 250-300 billion injected in it for it to even be able to still continue to operate with a solid balance sheet. At the moment is in red of 190 billion. So anybody who's going to acquire a bank, when they put that kind of money in there to at least plug that hole. So expect a lot of moves around Unity Bank as well. And of course, if you're somebody who's experienced in investing in the Nigerian stock market, you do know that when a company is looking like a potential target, their share price can be a beautiful bride. So you might want to look at that bank. As much as the numbers don't look good, the share price, can be quite attractive. I'm not saying buy you. I'm just saying want to pay attention to that stock. And of course, about time CBN also comes out and really tells us what the plan is for Unity Bank. You can't have banks that are running losses or have negative balance sheets still out there. Something has got to happen at some point, and let's know whether it's going to get acquired, or if there's any plan to inject capital into the bank from existing shareholders of that bank. But something needs to happen. Like I said, from next week, we're going to have a series where we're going to be looking at, some banks and their performance, and, their valuation and their potential to raise capital. We're going to be looking at that as well. So, but for now, I think Unity Bank is a bit of a concern for us at Nairametrics. In terms of earning forecast, NEM Insurance also came up with some earning forecasts. I really like this stock, guys. So it's an insurance company that knows how to make money. They do post profits year in, year out, regardless of their economy. They seem to know how to get their premiums right and then pay their claims well, and always ends up with sizable profit. And people who has invested in NEM Insurance over the years will always tell you that, of course, they've got their ups and downs, but technically they've always had better performances in terms of share price appreciation over the years. I still remember when the stock was selling below 1 naira. I know when it was just slightly above 1 naira. I think it's somewhere in region of 6 naira or so right now. So it's quite a stock that is doing very well. And so they made their projections last week for the second quarter of the year. And pre-tax profit that they're expecting is about 9.2 billion naira in pre-tax profit, much better than they did for the same period last year. So it looks like investors liked what they saw from their projections and rewarded them with a 21% pop. So NEM Insurance was 5 naira 50 kobo at the start of last week. It closed at 6 naira 65 kobo, so 21% reward. So it looks like investors like what they see with the stock and with their projections, and so giving it nice reward. It's one of the top 3 insurance stocks out there. So if you're looking for insurance stocks you want to put in your portfolio, I kind of think NEM is one of those insurance stocks that you might want to take a look at. Quite closely. Solid business, doing quite well, well run. Looks like their numbers, they're quite efficient in terms of how they run the business, and so no surprises here that they are projecting pre-tax profit. I just love it when I hear companies project pre-tax profit going forward. Yeah, we quickly move on to EcoBank. So EcoBank signed a deal with Afrexim and AFC. Big news for the Pan-African Bank. They said they're going to be raising $250 million in senior unsecured bridge to bond loan facility. I know my banks just like all this big grammar, bridge to bond loan facility. Anyway, so that just gives EcoBank enough capital they can use to continue with their trade finance activities. It's a Pan-African bank, and so they're very much involved in a lot of trade financing activities for African for companies operating in Africa. So think of companies that have regional presence across Africa. EcoBank is typically going to be that bank they will want to use mostly. So they did raise $250 million, so significant amount of money for the bank. So it didn't really reflect in their share price as much as I thought it would, but still a big deal for one of Africa's largest bank. I mean, it's just that we don't like to put them among the fugas because they're not necessarily like a Nigerian bank, you know what I mean? So, but they are up there as one of the the largest banks operating in Nigeria. And so $250 million, significant amount of money. Of course, Airtel is yet to release their full year results. In case you're wondering why, Airtel's year end closes March 31st. So at the end of this year, end of this month, you're likely going to see Airtel's result. I don't expect to see anything better than, MTN's result. Probably going to be along those lines. When they release their 9 months result, they posted slim profits because when they do release for their entire African operation, because like Airtel Africa. But if you go deep down into that result, you see that they did also reveal that as of last year, they incurred losses of up to $400 million. Airtel reports in dollars, not in naira. So, but they said that there are losses, FX-related losses, of about $400 million. And so expect that to be even wider in March because, that last year exchange rate was about 910 naira to the dollar. So when it closed. So now it's about 1,006. So expect that to be wider. So, however, Airtel, also another well-run company. One of the suites, Nairametrics suites, is stocks worth over 1 trillion naira. It's also a premium index stock. It's done very well over the years. And so what the shareholders are doing is they know that a lot of the challenges that they're having is not due to the operations of the business. It's just FX-related losses. And some of those losses are not really, cash losses, mostly paper losses. And so Airtel approved this share buyback program, which they've been implementing since March. And I think they want to buy back share. They have like $100 million or so stashed that they want to use to buy back their shares. And so when companies buy back shares, they're essentially reducing their capital. And when they reduce their capital, their earnings per share tend to go up. So it's usually another way of, paying dividend. So rather than give shareholders the dividend in cash, they buy shares in the market. And not a very common thing. It started a few years ago in Nigeria, but very common if you're used to investing outside the country. For those who love Warren Buffett a lot, you always hear him say he loves share buybacks, companies that do share buybacks, because companies that do share buybacks always appear juicy in terms of their valuation. So Airtel has started that share buyback, and they've been stepping it up. We've been tracking it at Nairametrics. We've seen that this week, this month alone, I think they've done over 4 million units or so in terms of the share buyback. Not much impact on the share price. Share price still around hovering around, I think they're buying about 93, 97 pounds or something thereabouts, but not much impact on Airtel's share price. So all in all, Nigerian stocks seems to be doing pretty well. And compared to treasury bills, because we did see treasury bills auction out last week, and of course we're seeing stop rates at about 21%, still pretty high, all-time high, but nowhere close to how stocks are doing. But Nigerians are still pretty hungry for treasury bills, and the central bank knows this, and so they're selling and mopping up cash from money supply from the economy. Over $1 trillion again sold last week or so. By the way, inflation numbers were out last week. I'm sure you've all seen that. We've now crossed 30%. I did say that we're going to cross 30%, one of my previous episodes. And we're now at a very strange territory. The last time Nigeria was anywhere close to this sort of inflation numbers was in 1996. And you know who was the leader at that time, right? Yeah, so we're now at that sort of levels now, inflation-wise. And inflation this time around, if you check the report very well, was driven largely by imported food inflation. Imported food inflation month on month rose to levels that we haven't seen before. And so, like I always say, inflation numbers tend to lag because prices, a lot of businesses tend to tweak their prices a few weeks after major events happen. So the last major event we saw was the exchange rate depreciation to 1.6 in February. And so a lot of companies are only just adjusting their numbers now and adjusting their prices. We've seen a number of price increases happen, and it's already happening across the board. So it wasn't a surprise for us to see inflation numbers go up. We think it's still going to go up next when they release this month or next month. We're still going to see a little bit of spike. There's still a number of things that haven't been increased yet, prices that haven't gone up yet. So still negative headwinds on the inflation side that we see at Nairametrics. And so got a plan pretty well. Like I said, like I always say, spend now, save later, because if you don't do that, prices are always going to catch up on you. All right, so that is Follow the Money for the week. Hope you got some useful nuggets today. Of course, every Monday, 8 to 8:30, we do this. If you miss any part of the show, you can always go back and listen to it on any of your podcast platforms. Don't forget to download Nairametrics app on your phone. And, of course, follow us across all platforms at Nairametrics, Twitter, Instagram, Facebook, anywhere. And, of course, also search for our WhatsApp channel. That is it for this week. I'm signing off, Ugodre. Until we see you again next week, do have a profitable week ahead. Goodbye.